One man asked questions that made people rethink everything they believed. His student created a school that shaped 2,000 years of thought. That student tutored Alexander the Great and founded the scientific method. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Three men who lived within a single lifetime. And together, they created the foundation of all Western philosophy, science, and education. Before we discover how three philosophers changed everything, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We're exploring history's greatest thinkers every week. Let's dive in. Athens, 5th century BCE. Three philosophers emerged in succession. Teacher, student. Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught Aristotle. Each built upon the previous, yet each developed revolutionary ideas. Together, they transformed how humanity thinks about knowledge, ethics, politics, and reality itself. Every philosophy that came after them traces its roots back to their ideas. Medieval Christianity relied on their frameworks. The Renaissance rediscovered their texts. The Enlightenment debated their principles. Modern democracy echoes their political theories. Today, we're exploring exactly what made each philosopher unique, how their ideas connected, and why their collective impact shaped everything we call Western civilization. Socrates, the question asker. Socrates lived from 470 to 399 BCE in Athens. He never wrote a single word. Everything we know about him comes from his students, primarily Plato, and from the historian Xenophon. What made Socrates revolutionary? He shifted philosophy away from studying the natural world. Previous philosophers, called the pre-Socratics, focused on questions like, what is the universe made of? What causes change? What is the nature of reality? Socrates said, forget that. Let's focus on how humans should live. What is virtue? What is justice? What is the good life? He developed what we now call the Socratic Method. He would approach someone in the marketplace who claimed to know something. Let's say they claim to know what courage means. Socrates would ask seemingly simple questions. Can you define courage? Does courage apply in all situations or only some? What distinguishes courage from recklessness? Through persistent questioning, he would expose contradictions in their beliefs. The person would realize they didn't actually understand what they thought they knew. This wasn't mockery. It was a search for truth through dialogue. Socrates believed the unexamined life isn't worth living. Self-knowledge, understanding your own ignorance, was the beginning of wisdom. His method influenced every form of philosophical inquiry that followed. Scientific method, legal cross-examination, psychotherapy, educational techniques, all trace back to Socratic questioning. But his relentless questioning made enemies. In 399 BCE, he was put on trial, charged with corrupting the youth of Athens and not believing in the city's gods. He was found guilty and sentenced to take hemlock poison. He refused to flee into exile. He accepted the judgment, even though he disagreed with it. His final hours, spent calmly discussing philosophy with friends before taking the poison, became legendary. Socrates proved that ideas were worth living for, and worth facing consequences for. Plato, the architect of ideas. Plato was born around 427 BCE, likely to an aristocratic Athenian family. He witnessed Socrates' trial and execution firsthand. This traumatic experience shaped his entire philosophical career. After Socrates passed, Plato traveled throughout the Mediterranean, studying geometry, astronomy, and philosophy. He returned to Athens around 387 BCE and founded the Academy. This was one of the first institutions dedicated entirely to philosophical inquiry. It operated for over 900 years, until 529 CE when the Christian emperor Justinian closed it. Plato wrote philosophical dialogues, not treatises. Most feature Socrates as the main character. This creates a fascinating challenge called the Socratic problem. Where does Socrates' philosophy end and Plato's begin? Scholars debate this endlessly, but most agree that Plato's mature works present his own original ideas, using Socrates as a literary device. What were Plato's revolutionary concepts? The theory of forms. This is Plato's most famous contribution. He argued that the physical world we see isn't the ultimate reality. It's merely a shadow of a higher eternal realm, the realm of forms or ideas. Take a circle. Every circle you draw is imperfect, but you can understand the concept of a perfect circle. Where does that perfect concept exist? In the realm of forms, Plato said. The form of circle is eternal, unchanging, perfect. Physical circles are imperfect copies. This applies to everything: justice, beauty, goodness. These aren't just words. They're eternal realities that exist independently of human thought. Plato believed philosophers, through rational inquiry, could access knowledge of these forms. This made philosophy the highest pursuit. Philosophers could perceive truth that others couldn't. In his most famous work, The Republic, Plato outlined an ideal society, ruled by philosopher kings, leaders trained in dialectic and understanding of the forms. He divided society into three classes: rulers who govern with wisdom, guardians who defend with courage, producers who provide with moderation. Each class fulfilling their role creates a just society. Many criticize this as authoritarian, but Plato believed only those who understood truth should govern. Democracy, he thought, gave power to people who didn't understand what was good. His political philosophy influenced countless thinkers. Early Christians adapted his ideas. Augustine used Platonic concepts to explain theology. Renaissance humanists rediscovered his texts. Enlightenment thinkers debated his vision of ideal government. Even Karl Marx's ideal communist state echoes Platonic structures. Aristotle, the systematic thinker. Aristotle was born in 384 BCE in Stagira, northern Greece. His father was physician to the king of Macedon. This connection would later shape Aristotle's life. At age 17, Aristotle traveled to Athens and joined Plato's academy. He studied there for 20 years, until Plato passed in 347 BCE. Aristotle then left Athens. He spent years traveling, studying biology, and conducting observations. In 343 BCE, King Philip II of Macedon invited him to tutor his son. That son was Alexander, later called Alexander the Great. Aristotle taught Alexander for several years, instilling values of rational inquiry and Greek culture. When Alexander began his conquests, Aristotle returned to Athens. In 335 BCE, he founded his own school, the Lyceum. Where did Aristotle differ from Plato? Fundamentally, on the nature of reality. Plato believed the forms existed separately from physical objects. Aristotle rejected this. He argued that form and matter are inseparable. The essence of a thing exists in the thing itself, not in some separate realm. This led him to emphasize observation and empirical study. If you want to understand horses, study actual horses. Don't just contemplate the ideal form of horse. This empirical approach transformed natural philosophy into what we now call science. Aristotle classified animals into species and genera. He dissected specimens to understand anatomy. He observed weather patterns, ocean tides, and astronomical movements. He created the field of formal logic. The syllogism became his most famous logical tool. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. This structure of reasoning dominated Western logic for over 2,000 years, until the development of modern symbolic logic in the 19th century. Aristotle also developed virtue ethics. He asked, "What is the good life?" His answer was eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or human flourishing. But it means more than pleasure. It's living well, achieving your potential. Virtue, Aristotle said, is a mean between extremes. Courage is the mean between cowardice and recklessness. Generosity is the mean between stinginess and wastefulness. Developing these virtues through practice leads to eudaimonia. Aristotle wrote on nearly every subject: physics, biology, ethics, politics, rhetoric, poetry, metaphysics. His works totaled an estimated 200 books, though only 31 survive. His influence was enormous. Medieval Islamic scholars studied Aristotle extensively. Al-Farabi, Avicenna, and Averroes built entire philosophical systems on Aristotelian foundations. These texts reached medieval Europe through Arabic translations. Thomas Aquinas integrated Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology, creating a synthesis that dominated Western thought for centuries. The Renaissance and scientific revolution eventually challenged Aristotelian physics, but his logic, ethics, and political philosophy remain influential. What makes these three philosophers extraordinary isn't just their individual brilliance, it's their connection, teacher to student to student. Within approximately 100 years, Socrates asked questions that revealed ignorance. Plato built systems to explain ultimate reality. Aristotle grounded those systems in observation and logic. Each responded to the previous. Plato was inspired by Socrates' execution to seek unchanging truths beyond corrupt human society. Aristotle loved Plato but rejected his otherworldly forms in favor of studying this world. Together they established the major branches of Western philosophy. Epistemology, the study of knowledge, from Socrates' questioning. Metaphysics, the study of reality, from Plato's forms. Ethics, the study of how to live, from all three. Politics, the study of governance, from Plato and Aristotle. Logic, the study of reasoning, from Aristotle. Every philosopher who came after either followed their paths or deliberately rejected them. The Stoics adapted Socratic ethics. The Neoplatonists revived Platonic mysticism. The Scholastics Christianized Aristotelian logic. Modern empiricism traces to Aristotle's observation methods. Modern rationalism echoes Platonic emphasis on reason. Even today, contemporary philosophy debates questions they first asked. What is justice? What is knowledge? What is the good life? How should we govern? The schools they founded, the Academy and the Lyceum, became models for all universities that followed. Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, all trace their educational models back to these Athenian institutions. So how did three men in a single lifetime shape all Western thought? Socrates taught that questioning is the path to wisdom. Plato taught that reason can access eternal truths. Aristotle taught that observation and logic reveal how the world works. Together, they created the intellectual framework for Western civilization: philosophy, science, ethics, politics, education. All built on foundations they laid 2,400 years ago. Their ideas survived the fall of empires. They adapted to different religions and cultures. They influenced Islamic, Jewish, and Christian thinkers. They sparked the Renaissance and guided the Enlightenment. And today, when we ask fundamental questions about life, knowledge, and society, we're still walking paths they first explored. Three men, one lifetime, all Western thought. If this changed how you see philosophy, hit that like button. Subscribe for more discoveries about the thinkers who shaped our world. Which philosopher's ideas resonate with you most? Socrates' questioning, Plato's idealism, or Aristotle's empiricism? And why? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read everyone and love discussing with you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.